The plants I'm going to cover now are Camellia sasanquas, and I'm going to cover four varieties that I use. I'm not real big on a lot of the other varieties for reasons I'll cover, but I'm going to focus on these four varieties because they each have some good strengths to them as design elements in plant design. So the one you're looking at here is Camellia Sasanqua Yuletide, and this is probably my favorite of the Sasanqua Camellias, and the reason is that it has the longest bloom cycle by far. My experience with this one, which is in my front yard, is that I've had it for 9 years, and a couple of things. It stays about 5 to 6 feet tall, which is a really great size, but it's only about 24 to 30 inches wide. Now these can get wider certainly and taller, but as you can see here with the Sasanqua Camellia is that it's they're more likely to stay 5 to 6 or 7 feet tall and about 30 inches to maybe 3 feet wide. That's a very handy design size in residential plant design, and that's what I really love about these. Secondly, the color, obviously. These bloom in fall and winter, which is kind of an odd bloom time. The Conejiro actually blooms in the fall, and Yuletide blooms from November, December, January, and I've had it blooming as long as into March, so it's a very long bloom cycle. Conejiro is shorter than that, as are the others. Typically they're 3 to 5 weeks, but still a really nice bloom time. Secondly, when they're not in bloom, as you can see here, they have a nice dark green glossy leaf, so the shrub is good looking, and it's really good around houses or fences because it's the perfect height to kind of soften and screen architecture without just totally erasing it. This one here is Camellia Sasanqua Hanajaiman, and this one is lightly fragrant. I had this for a few years by my front door, and it was really nice. It seemed to bloom in October. It always was in its full display around Halloween, so the end of October and into November, and has a really beautiful whitish petal that has blush pink on the edge of the petals. As you can see on the ground here, one of the things about these is a little different than Japonica camellias in that the petals fall off separately as opposed to the entire flower falling off, and a lot of people complain about that because Japonica camellias tend to leave big chunks of flower on the ground and considered a lot messier. And this last Sasanqua Camellia is called Showa-No-Sakae, and it's more of a ground cover. This is an older planting at the Santa Barbara courthouse, and I really love how this spreads out. I use it as a ground cover under larger trees, and it's beautiful used that way. And again, this is more of a fall bloomer. So kind of a range there, but you can see how they have a clean appearance. They're evergreen. I'm not sure entirely how hardy they are, but certainly down into the teens. I've had them where we are and not had them damaged, so they can handle a lot of cold, and a really nice time that they display their flowers. When they're established, they're semi-drought tolerant, I would say. And one of the big surprises is they can take a lot of sun. So in hot inland areas like where we are, they're surprising in terms of how much sun they can take. You can actually put them in full sun. I've seen them used as a hedge in Danville where it gets in the upper 90s during the summer, and they can handle that just fine. The other thing is that the deer usually leave these alone. They're fairly reliable in deer areas. In extreme cases, I've seen these eaten, but 90% of the time these have worked in deer areas and they've been left alone. The other thing is that they can handle a lot of shade as well, so they're incredibly versatile in terms of how much sun they can handle. They go from sun to shade pretty easily, especially if you're near the coast. They can take any exposure. In a hot inland valley, though, I would not put these against a wall in afternoon sun. That's how I would separate that. That extra 10 or so degrees of heat buildup, I've seen those burn the plant, so avoid that if you can. The other thing is that I would consider these moderate maintenance. The only real maintenance is when the flowers bloom and then they start to fall. They can make a bit of a mess on the ground, and so if you're using them in a ground cover area where there's no real cleanup needs, then that's great. But if it's near a sidewalk like you saw in the earlier shot, you probably want to I'd consider that you do want to clean those up, just because for a few weeks you're going to have a little bit of a mess, but certainly not an extreme situation for maintenance. The last thing I want to say about Sasanqua Camellias, in my experience, they do not get the problem that Japonica Camellias have gotten, where they get petal blight during the winter months. It tends to rain while these are blooming, and Japonica Camellias, especially the whiter ones, have really developed this problem with petal blight where the petals turn brown. I've not seen that on any of the varieties I've shown you, and so that's a way to get some winter bloom where you don't have the issues associated typically with Japonica Camellias. And those are Sasanqua Camellias, very useful evergreen flowering shrub in plant design. Highly recommend these plants.